Good afternoon and welcome to the Poli Sci Schenectady News. I'll be your host, Sally Hernandez.
And I'm your co-host, Hillary. Let's get into it.
Immigration is when a group of people move into a foreign country with the intent of residing there as a permanent resident. In the U.S., there are many ways to become a permanent resident. The most well-known are typically green cards and visas, which are distributed depending on work status.
Immigration increases economic growth, cultural diversity, and eases pressure on the aging population. But immigration also decreases real wages, increases pressures on public services, and it can create social disharmony. As a result, immigration remains a heavily disputed issue.
On that note, we are sad to report to anyone who has kept interest in the immigrants of Rotterdam about what is happening. They have been moved out of Motel 8 that they have been staying in and finding residency in during the past year.
Will they be coming back to the city where they came from?
No. At the moment, the County of Rotterdam is unsure of what will happen with these immigrants. As of now, a lot of them live in places like Latham, Albany, and other counties around the area. And the county has willingly provided buses to allow these students to still attend school.
I guess that's where freedom to a public education becomes helpful. The New York Constitution allows the right for students between 5 to 21 to attend free public school education, regardless of their immigration status.
But the question we face today with this news is, how far do these concepts extend? To whom does the freedoms and civil liberties of the Constitution relate to?
Our civil liberties feel like a given right, especially with free speech and free exercise of religion. There are exceptions to our freedoms, yet it still feels wrong to take them away from regular civilians. I mean, civil liberties must also relate to immigrants, right? Especially if we provide them with education and housing.
I mean, but does the U.S. even consider them as people? That's a question we have to be able to answer as well. In our laws, they're usually referred to as aliens when considering their rights.
Well, here's the thing. They have their rights, such as due process, under the Fifth Amendment, which is its own tricky problem in general. Some may go to an immigration court, others get deported. In general, immigrants technically keep their civil liberties, American or not. You're supposed to be protected under these laws. But there are situations where deportation may be used to silence individuals, which could be a violation of their First Amendment. Some families have been deported for speaking up about their own immigration stories.
While immigration seems like a problem far away, it has become a question on our back doorstep, especially with what's happening in Rotterdam. So now let's switch over to Ryan, who's at the motel in Rotterdam, to provide us some more information about what's going on.
Thanks, Celia and Hillary, for starting us off. Immigration is an issue that's been part of the U.S. since the late 1800s, and now we could say it has become a larger issue, especially today. Celia and Hillary brought up a big question that has been faced in the U.S. more recently in past years, with this question of how far do civil liberties reach? The government does not answer this question well, but answers it with another question. How much do they deserve our civil liberties? It's a question that is still in a state of contention, especially surrounding the conversation about illegal immigrants. Are they granted the same civil liberties as citizens, such as due process of law, when they are not technically citizens? The situation in Rotterdam forces these questions to be asked. But when will we as Americans answer them? When will we stop restricting them from being able to change?
Currently, there are more than 10 million undocumented or illegal immigrants and aliens living in the United States. The most common country of origin for these aliens is Mexico. If President Biden is allowed to have his way with U.S. border policy, the number of illegal aliens is only going to increase in America. If he has his way, with it will come increases in crime and losses of careers for hardworking Americans, and will pass legislation that will weaken our border. But you can help. With your vote in November, Donald Trump will be able to strengthen American border policy and reduce the number of undocumented immigrants entering our country. When Donald Trump was president, illegal immigration saw an all-time low since 2007. Ever since Joe Biden was elected, the numbers have been steadily rising once again. Donald Trump's solution? Repeal DACA. It is protecting unregistered aliens, and Joe Biden's Congress would not be able to repeal it. But with Trump as president, Repealing DACA would allow many more illegal aliens to be deported and help clean up our country. Only Donald Trump will be able to save us from living in a country of crime and disorder due to illegal immigration. He is looking to pass new legislation that would make our borders the strongest they have ever been. He just needs your vote. If you believe Biden is unable to handle our border, vote for Donald Trump this November. Joe Biden. Too weak to handle our border, too weak to run our country.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
My name is Alejandra Jerez, and I am an illegal immigrant. Being an immigrant is nowhere close to how politicians make us sound. We are harmless. I became an illegal immigrant when my parents brought me over at the young age of 3 years old. My story is no different from the others you've heard. As I got older, my parents made me fear the police, crime, and anything else that could possibly not only get me, but my entire family deported. I feared what would happen, seeing as my parents felt so unsafe in my hometown that they had to flee to the U.S. Now I am a DACA, or as others call me, a dreamer. I dream of being an American one day and paying my parents back for allowing me to succeed in America and have all of America's endless opportunities and possibilities. I dream of helping my parents earn their green card and one day being able to pledge to a flag that I belong to. During Donald Trump's reign in power, my DACA application was terminated. I had no reason to. And once again, that dream was lost. The Supreme Court overturned Donald Trump's decision to stop DACA. And that was an exertion of judicial review. When the court uses judicial review, it determines whether a law is against the Constitution of the U.S. Wouldn't we want the president to continue making laws that agree with the Constitution we all are supposed to follow? Under the Biden administration, not only was my DACA accepted, but it extended my rights. I now have health care. While I know this fight to U.S. citizenship is hard, the Biden administration has helped to make it easier and possibly possible. If you support my story and other stories of DACA immigrants, vote for President Biden. He is supported by the people, the court, and the country. He's not only supported by the Democratic Party, but parts of the Republican Party who can no longer support Donald Trump and his policies. Vote for Joe Biden. Vote for a better life for immigrants like me and my family.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
So we return back to the news with updates on Biden's executive order with the southern border. This order will give the White House more control over the influx of migrants at the southern border. If the 7-day average of border crossing exceeds 2,500 at entry ports, officials can turn away the migrants. Mike Johnson is outraged at this order, stating that from what we're hearing, it is the new legislation that will ignore multiple elements that have to be addressed. The elements that were in our legislation that we passed over 14 months ago. Johnson long sought out security measures demanded by Republican lawmakers, such as fixing the asylums and reinstating the U.S. Remain in Mexico policy. These policies were part of the H.R. 2 legislation. Despite Johnson's efforts, this piece of legislation was shut down by the democratically controlled Senate. Following the executive order, the president encourages Congress to continue passing border security measures. This could fight Johnson's claim that he wants to issue some weak executive orders one by one. By the way, one executive order supposedly to try to address the issue, who calls his action window dressing. However, lawmakers haven't been able to pass bipartisan legislation on this immigration issue. Whether the lawmakers will overcome their partisan views is unknown, and judging from previous events, it's unlikely. The president's and Congress's actions on immigration will continue to be analyzed, especially as the election approaches. On that note, that's all we have for you tonight. Have a good night.